Welcome back to another episode of Richard Does Stuff. Today it's a quick one. One of my other hobbies, I love brewing beer, and I've got another friend who loves brewing beer, and we like to swap beers. Now I've just made a lovely citrus IPA. He's made a honey brown, I think he's calling it. So in order to swap the bottles over, I'm just going to make a quick crate that'll hold 4 bottles. Now typically, I like using these bottles with a pop top. They are easy to keep clean, nice and easy to seal, easy to use, easy to reuse. So I'm going to make one that'll hold 4 of these. Now what I typically use, as you can see on the bench behind me, is I typically like to use old pallet wood or any old pieces of wood around. This thing isn't a wonderfully dressed up thing. I'm just going to cut this thing up with the power saw, get the pieces, line them up, quickly bang this together, knock this together around half an hour or so. Alright, so let's get to it. Before we cut this, it's important to make sure that it's the right size. Now, this is rough and ready, so it doesn't have to be perfect. But the 2 bottles there, and roughly how they're going to be, here's where the supports are for the pallet, so we clearly have more than enough. So I'm just going to cut it off the ends, trim them up, make this thing and get it going, and it's a nice quick build. So let's get to it. Right, we have plenty of wood to put this together, so let's have a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. My sides. Now, let's see. Sorry about that. Coffee delivered, courtesy of my daughter. Excellent. Alright, now back to this. This looks good, so 2 of these look to be about right. Get the 2 flattest and the 2 most even. These 2, there for my sides. These 2 look like they're going to be my base. Let me get this out of the way. So I'm putting this together. I've got to allow for sides on there. So it's got to allow for sides, middle. That's just a little bit narrow, and that's fine. So we'll just pull that out a bit. So what I need is roughly, let me look at this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to trim these off a little bit down the side. So there'll be 3 bars on the bottom, and then I'll build a cage around it because I want a bar across the bottom so the middle spar, middle divider, has somewhere to screw onto. In fact, no, I don't need to do that, do I? Thinking as we go. So that's fine. So I need that, that, and that, which means I'm going to need roughly that much. I need a pencil. So I'm going to need roughly that's measured off. That's going to be my ends, my end template. So I'm going to need 2 ends for that. Let's get the drop saw out and get that done. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim this side up, and then I'll remeasure to make sure we're right. Just want to make sure I just want to make sure that I've got nice flush ends so it doesn't stick out and look too gangly. Perfection isn't required, but it does need to look fairly neat. And yes, I should have had my protection on. So let's now re-measure that with my 1, 2, 3. So these are the ends, so I'll just do, that's the one I just trimmed off. Once again, not looking for perfection, just looking for mostly the same. Right, I'm going to cut them roughly in half. Doesn't need to be perfect because once again, perfection is not what we're going for. But I will cut these to the size as well. Right, you guys can sit over there. Now, my base piece, let's get a clean edge on them to work with. Right, that's our clean edge. Now, the way I'm going to put it together is these are just going to butt around in a square. It's the simplest way to do it. So what I need is I need that. The length is going to be the length of one of these plus one of these. Right, so these pieces are my side. This is my base. That doesn't look square to me. Oh, it doesn't matter because it's going to be square. So I'm going to start off, that'll go to there. No, I've done that a little bit too long, so let's shorten that up. I do need that to be just one. That one. Put that to there, because that's where that's going to go. Trim that off. Make sure that's neat. Back and tick. Right, they're now lined up. I'm going to cut these in half. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use... Actually, I think I prefer these ones, do I? Do I prefer these ones to these ones? No, I need one for the bottom and one for the top, so I'll cut these to shape, get these in place, then I'll worry about the other ones, because I'm going to have to put a couple of corners coming up to hold it all together. Not a problem. All right, let's get the table saw set up and let's get these split in two down to the shape I need. Actually, them and them. So let's, as we think, I'm going to use these for something else later on. I'm going to turn, that'll be one row and these one row. So I need to cut these the same shape as this. Right, back in a tick, off to the table saw again. Off to the drop saw. Right, I've got 4 of these all pretty much the same size. 4 of these all pretty much the same size. Going to split them in two down the table saw. It doesn't need to be perfect, just as long as I've got 4 for the bottom, 4 for the top part. Let's get to that one. Right, all I do is measure this. Roughly 9.5, so about 46 mil. there. So once again, I don't care about being perfect, just as long as I've got some set ones. Now we're going to raise the table, raise the blade, so it is roughly, I say, 1/8 of an inch, which is about 3 mil above the workpiece. So these are the ones I'm working. All right. With small pieces, pushing them through, you don't want them kicking back. So one of these is awesome. Nice little hook there. I'm putting downward pressure on the front, so it's going to stop the thing kicking back. I don't have a riving knife in here at the moment. The one didn't come with it. I'm going to have to make one. It's on my list of things to do, but we'll get that done fairly soon at some point. Right, so let's cut these into my sides. Now, just before I continue, when you're cutting, bring this down again. When you're cutting a piece of wood, you push it, make sure it goes, and you push it all the way through. Don't stop halfway and have it lifted. Push it until it's absolutely clear. Okay? We now have our base. We have, this will be the lower one. Let me line these up so they're all the right size, because it wasn't a perfect halves. So, alright. This is the bottom, this is the top. So they're just going to be stuck on like that. And we're going to do this really, really simply. Really simply. Not sure if you can hear that in the background. Neighbour's kid's having a bit of a meltdown. I do apologise for that. Right. Very simple gluing, very simple drilling. Let's get this done. Right. So what we're using here, this is a countersunk drill bit. I love these. It means that I make sure I'm not going to have the head sticking through. Alright, get yourself a set of these if you can. You don't need to spend a fortune. I think I picked these up from Aldi, our local place. I think it was like 10 or 15 bucks for a set of, for that set. So I've got basically all the sizes I want, but pretty much it's the two smaller sizes which I typically use. I love them. They're real easy to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this out simply. I'm putting the clean side down because I know that's the flatter side, so that's going to work best at holding this together. I'm just going to put that one onto there. I said this is a rough and ready job. This will be done pretty soon. Said we're not worried about perfection at all, not in any way, shape or form. Just want this to line up nicely. I only care about the first piece at the moment. The others will be done on my first hole done properly. Actually with there. Actually I do a little bit longer, I don't need a lot of screws. Seem to be seated straight. Right, let's make sure it lines up. nicely there. Pull this piece into line. I think my screw, my drill bit might be a little bit on the bent side. So I'm lining it up with the long piece, and the side pieces can be dealt with as and when. So right now, let's get that drilled in. Now, we just square it up a bit, and then I'll put another screw on these ends to make sure the whole thing lines up properly. Alright, first up, get a rag, wipe up excess glue because I don't want it on my hands. Alright. That's roughly square, that's roughly square, it's roughly square, and that's roughly square. So we are now roughly square. Now let's put a screw into here, into the corners. So this is a simple build. Right. Gives it a bit of a rustic look at the end. Rough and ready is more than fine for this. Now this one's leaning up a bit, so I'm going to put a bit of pressure on this one to get this one in place. Got it. Beautiful. This one, make sure it's brought across a bit so it lines up straight as I can. Right, we now have the basis for our bottle holder. What I'm going to do, I'm actually not going to put corner spars and hold it on because the side brackets with the handle is going to be more than sufficient. Remember, we're holding 4 bottles of beer, right? We're not talking a lot of weight there. We're talking about 2 kilos max. So we don't need massive amounts of strength with this thing. So I'm going to build out this thing. Once again, I kept the smooth sides down, so that's what we're going to do with this. All right. You get a flat surface here. All right, that will do like that for that. And I'll fix up that. I just want one straight. Once the first one's in place, the rest will be fairly easy. Notice the wood's poking up, and that's not because I've made any mistakes. That's because this is pallet wood. Pallet wood generally is not straight wood. Once again, that's probably a good piece of advice. If you're using pallet wood for construction, be very careful, because even though it's been sitting there and bolted down, pallets live outside an awful lot, so they pick up a lot of moisture. So, and what will happen is they'll tend to warp. So look at this gap here. Now once I've put that and bolted in place or screwed in place, it's going to be fine for the purposes of what I'm using it for. But pallet wood is generally not the best wood for construction because it's very hard to get through. You really need to season it and check the moisture of it. And check the moisture of it, make sure it's clean. I don't have a moisture gauge here. I generally don't use pallet wood for anything more than these little sorts of projects. It's things that don't really matter if they're not square and true. But this just needs to be roughly accurate, right? Right, that sits quite nicely on top of there. Now that'll be up there about that height. What I will do before I put it on there is I'll get something and put some spacers on. So now what I need to do is I need something in the middle so the bottles don't clash together. Now for that, I think I will use these pieces that were these pieces. I'll put together there. And we're going to be really scientific about this. I'm going to put that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that one's got a split, not going to use that. That one's got a split, not going to use that one. So these two look good. Let me get a nice straight edge on them. Yeah, so let me get a nice straight edge. I'm going to cut a straight edge on that on the on the drop saw. Then I'm going to cut them to size. And then I'll come back and show you what we're going to do next on how we get this done. Right, cleaned up one edge, so I now know I have one nice straight edge. All I'm going to do to measure this is I'm going to sit it under there. Mark it off there, so I now have a nice mark going across there. And then we're going to cut that with the drop saw, and we'll have my two edges. And then I've just got to work out how to put it in there. Back in a sec. Alright, I've now got a nice piece. It goes in there. It's not perfect. A bit tighter that way. But it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter. So what I need to do now is to work out the middle of these. So I can cut a groove so I can fit them together like that. Alright. This is the only time in the whole process I need to be reasonably accurate. And joy upon joy, this is exactly 190 mil. So that's 95 mil for the center line. So that's what I'm going to mark off there. Marking of the same one. Once again, marking off 95. So now I need to cut out I need to cut out that groove on both of these so they'll splice together. So what I'm going to do it both at the same time, so I'm going to tape them together for now. Now, hanging on the side of my workbench, I've got this nice little rack of tapes. Just makes it easy to grab the tape I need. Alright, fold a piece back over. That way, you'll be able to get it back off next time. Right. Now, the easiest way to do this, is to run it through, probably to run it through the table saw across like that. Once again, it is not going to be perfect, but hey, that's not a problem. So I need that is 7 centimeters, so 70 mil, so I need it 3,500. So I need to raise my bar till it's 3,500, and then we're going to do this, and I need to get 12 mil wide. So let me measure that. So I've got 12 mil, that's 6 mil on either side of this. And once again, perfection is not required. Alright, so let's get the center of this cut out. Now let's make sure it's a good enough fit by getting one of our scrap pieces, and that is a nice fit. So now we have what we need for the centerpiece. Let's remove the tape. We have our bottle holder. Right, so that's going to go into there. That like that. The bottles will sit like that. Now I don't want it sitting flat on the bottom, because I want it up higher, because it's also going to be screwed into the top rung as well. So in order to do that, I need to put a spacer on the bottom, and that's probably going to be that. So now let me get these out of the way. Now, before we put this together and start screwing these things in place, let's work out exactly the height we want these things at. Right, I've got these little rods from a previous project, so I think they will do excellently as the spacer. So that will sit on there, and that will tell me how much I need. And in fact, they've fallen out, but that doesn't matter. That sits pretty perfectly for what I want it to do, because my spacer can't live there. I just need it there to hold the thing in place while I put some screws and that in there. All right. So first up, let's get a screw on the end here. That's in place. Now, to get this one where I want it, starting off, let's put a spacer there. So let's put, first of all, let's get that on there. That's right, yep. Put a spacer, doesn't really matter, spacer there, put it up against it. Now drill our hole through there, drill and put our screw in. We have a nice little crate. Put them in. What we're missing is a handle. So we need a handle. So with these bottles here, handle's going to need to be about here. So this piece of wood, I think that will be quite sufficient. Now I'm not even going to bother sorting the end out for that one. All I need to do is to make sure that the ends are in the same spot, and I can get my hole through there for my handle. And what I'm going to use for that is a piece of an old broom handle I've got. So let me drag that out and I'll show you what I mean. Right, this is an old broom handle, and I'll drill a hole through there and hold it in place. If I need to, I might put a bit of glue and a tack through there. See how we go with that handle. Right. You don't need to. I do know this is a 20mm piece of wood. I know that because I've used it before for making a handle on another one, which I built completely different, I might add. So I love these Forstner bits because this will go straight through this without any issues at all. So I'm just going to use the drill press for that. And then once the holes are through, I'll then look about knocking the edges off there just to make it look a bit neater, because I don't like that corners. That looks a bit rubbish. So I'll put the hole through there, and then we'll. Okay, we've got our thing. Now that is really tight. So that is going to be that is very tight in there. So I'm going to need to bash that in with a bit of a hammer, which is fine by me because I want that to be tight. Maybe a little bit sanding to sand the edges off around there. So we'll get to that in a sec. So the next thing I'm going to do, back in a tick, I'm just going to knock the edges off that, just roughly, and then we'll get the sander out and we'll just buff them off to make them look neat. All right, very rough and ready. Let's knock the edges off, sand that up a bit, make it look decent, and then we'll get a handle on that. All right, so now what I need to work out is how long do I need a piece of this. So basically, they're going to screw to the sides, and this needs to be as long as to go from there to there. So let me mark that off, and we're going to mark just a little bit extra. So if it sticks out, that's fine, because I'd rather a little bit too much than not enough. So I'll just cut that off. So now we have that. Now I'm just going to sand off those edges just a little bit so they will jam into there. Right, we have our pieces. We have that. We have this. Now what we need to do, I'm going to put these into here first. We've got a tiny split in the wood there, so it was a bit tight, which means I might actually drive just to make sure that it's pegged in place. But that's pretty good for something that's meant to be So now I need, what I want to do, I'm going to line it up with the base of there. I'm going to put one screw in there, and then put one screw through there, then I'll make sure it's square before I put the top screw in. There we have it. Just need to deal with that, and I'll do that off camera. Now, this whole thing took me about an hour while I was filming. If I wasn't filming, I'd just do things at my own pace. Probably would have taken me about just over half that time. So I now have another crate. I now have 3 crates, all with beer in them, going out to various places, and no 2 are the same, because each one I go, all right, what am I going to do this time? All right, I want them to look rustic. All I might do later on is I might just run a bit of a sander over there, I just want to take the splinters off, but I'm not interested in tidying it up, because I want it to look a little bit old, a little bit used. All right. So I hope you've enjoyed that build. It was a nice and simple one. You don't need to be a major handyman to do these sorts of things. All of that I could have done with hand tools. It would have just taken a bit longer. Let me know what you think. Constructive feedback. If you want to just tell me I'm rubbish, well then, yeah, why bother, right? I know I'm not a carpenter. I'm not a woodworker. I'm a home handyman. I'm a jack of all trades. I'll have a crack at something, and every time I do something, I do a bit better than I did last time. Eventually, I start to make some good stuff. Just as an example of that, I want to show you this. Now, my grandson has to have a breathing machine when he sleeps. He sleeps on a top bunk, so we need somewhere to put that breathing machine. So, my daughter and I made this nice little tray, nicely lacquered. My daughter decorated with space themes, because what 8-year-old doesn't like space, and we know he does. All right, and so next weekend I'm going to go and bolt that up onto his bed so his breathing machine can be there. And this thing looks really good. Yeah, will it stand up to high quality scrutiny? Probably not, but an 8-year-old is going to love this. All right, and I'm pretty sure that his 6-year-old brother is going to say, hey Pop, can I have one too? And the answer is going to be, sure mate, what do you want us to decorate it with? I'll tell you now, it's going to be dinosaurs. So we keep building stuff. We do a little bit better each time. So stay with me, like, subscribe, share it. Let's see how many people want to, have a look at this. Tell me what you want. Tell me what sort of things you like me to build. I'll have a crack at most things. My next build though is a turntable for my wife. She likes to make cakes. I'm going to repurpose the guts of an old microwave to make her a turntable. So stay tuned. Come back soon. See you next time. Thanks guys.